confidence. So that's an interesting comment because, okay, well, confidence. I'm looking for confidence. So if we want to give our stakeholders confidence, then we probably want to be thinking about coverage. And what percentage coverage do we achieve? And how do we measure that? We want to measure requirements coverage. We want to measure risk coverage. We want to measure code coverage. Maybe we want to measure all of them. We can give people a feel of that. See, this is what matters to this guy. So we need to do that. We need to connect to that. And the way that we can connect to that is by saying we want to cover a lot of the product. QA team provides broad knowledge that crosses organizational boundaries. Okay. So this gets us to the question of dealing with systems of systems. One of the problems that we have in a lot of big organizations, banks and insurance companies and other organizations that have large, complex data centers with a lot of different applications running in them, is that everybody seems to be off in their own silo, and they're stuck in their silo. They see and think about what's within their particular little applicational purview. The problem is that at some point or another, you have to do system integration testing. Now, you might be saying, no, that's not really true. We just do system testing and then we put it into production. Well, no, actually that is true. Either you as tester do system integration testing or your customers and users do system integration testing, but somebody's going to make sure that all of these complex applications that are in the data center work together. And the only question is whether the defects associated with that will be found before or after the application goes into production. And keep in mind, once the applications go into production, they're now working on production data. And the scary risk of not doing system integration testing is that you are going to have some sort of shared data repository that is going to get hopelessly corrupted by two applications that didn't get tested together in system tests. So this item of the broad knowledge crossing organizational boundaries, this is where you really can emphasize, okay, we have a system integration team, and here are the different end-to-end tests that we've identified and that we perform. So that's our metric. What's the number of different kinds of end-to-end kinds of things that we've explored. Okay. QA and UAT testing period and process provide a central reference point coordinating the various projects. And now we're talking about the ability to have some clear, delineated handoffs, organizational handoffs that everybody understands. And we're talking about good reporting of results, clear status, and so forth here. We can ask people, hey, do you feel like you're getting the right information from us to manage what you need to manage? QA prevents problems rather than just detecting them. In this organization, they were involved in requirements reviews and design reviews, and they had metrics on, this is the kinds of problems that we can find during these reviews. QA helps me pass the CIO test because if something bad were to happen in production, I could honestly say I'd done everything I could. This is back to the level of confidence, right? And this is from a development manager. The development manager felt confident because of the test team. The QA team provides useful, timely, credible information that helps guide the project. So, this is the kind of thing, survey the people who are important consumers of your reports and make sure that this is true, because certainly if people do not believe that you're providing useful, timely, and credible information, that's a major failure as a test organization, because one of the main things we do is provide information. I mean, they're assessing quality, right? And if people don't feel that our assessments of quality are useful, timely, and credible, then why are we doing what we're doing, and shouldn't we be doing it differently? And that information should help guide the project. So telling somebody a fact which is true and which is credible, but which has absolutely no bearing on how to move forward successfully on the project is not extremely helpful. Bad news from QA is handled effectively, and they have good knowledge of the big picture. So, are we able, when we present bad news, to come forward with options for how to deal with that? Do we work effectively with other people in the organization when we identify problems to say, hey, let's work together, try to figure out how we move forward, because the project probably will move forward. I mean, the big question is, will you be on board? Or maybe you'll be on board, but will you have any influence? If you want to have influence on how projects move forward into success, then certainly exploiting is maybe the wrong word, but making sure that you are ready to be a part of solving problems when problems arise is part of being perceived as a strong contributor on a project, and how to win recognition as a valued member of the team. Now, all of these things, these are not going to happen by accident. But that said, I think it is possible for most test organizations. I do not think that there's that any of this praise here was context-driven, if you will. In other words, it was something that could only happen in this organization, or was really unique to this organization, would happen to be a bank. I mean, I think that this kind of thing, where you determine what matters to people and you connect effectively to it, and you then sell the fact that you've done that to them, you demonstrate that connection, you demonstrate the value, really, you know, it's something that we all can do, and it's something we should all aspire to, because it's a difference between having a test team that's, you know, a great place to work, where people feel valued and you know, that they're making a strong contribution, versus maybe a place where people work and say, well, I know what I'm doing here, but nobody else seems to. Okay. Now, this is another finding which is sometimes surprising for some of our clients. It is no longer surprising for me. It hasn't been surprising for me for a little over 10 years now, I would guess. Probably, well, actually, probably more like 15 now that I think about it. The clarity of my thinking on this continued to evolve until about 10 or so years ago, and shortly after I wrote Critical Testing Processes, I think it's sort of gotten this completely through my head that testing is not a cost center. Now, I like this quote from Derek Bach, here, former president of Harvard, of if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. And I think if you rephrase that to say, if you think testing is expensive, try shipping crappy products all the time. You know, that's basically the inverse of that from a testing point of view. You know, if testing is seen as expensive, well, then just forego it for a while and ship untested software, see what happens. Now, here's the thing. You know, how many of you out there listening know exactly how much money testing saved your company last year? We'll come back to this in the question and answer session, and those of you who can provide a figure and tell me how you came about it, I'll be impressed by that and give you an attaboy, and maybe ask you a few questions about how that worked as we go through the Q&A session. But you know, this really is, I believe, a question that we ought to be able to answer, and we ought to be able to answer it with numbers. And, you know, waving our hands around and going, oh, we saved the company a lot of money, and quality is free, and, you know, all these platitudes that everybody knows and everybody's heard, but that do not drive behaviors. You know, we need to get away from that, and we need to think about, okay, how do we determine the answer to this? And about 1/3 of our assessment clients both do not know and cannot get the data to determine the answer. In other words, they haven't even set up some of the data collection facilities, which honestly are pretty straightforward. I mean, if you've got a bug tracking system and you're able to reconcile bugs found in the field versus bugs found in test, you're halfway there. The only other thing you need to be able to do is do some rough